you know. I think, we already are that. It's probably just the recognition of that. And part of that path was actually learning to nurture myself, what I would extend to another, I'm a lover. I love to take care of people and light people up. And yet it would feel so natural for me to do that to anybody in my proximity. And yet, did I always take the time to take care of this body and being, and I didn't.
Right.
I didn't. And I think at this stage through life experience, and also just looking back, I recognize like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that this little one came now, because I, stumbled upon through grace the gift of nourishing and mothering my own self.
I think that there's, another thing that you and Tony teach at nearly every program is, when you're on that airplane and there's turbulence, do they say, okay, put your oxygen mask on you first? It's like, even if you're sitting next to an infant. So when you speak about mothering of self, and letting that love come to yourself first, and the importance of that.
Yes.
Whether you do have children for your own, so that you can be your best self for them, or whether you don't have children. There is, even when you in the beginning there, when you mentioned as a sponsor, it reminds me of anyone who is in, whether you're in the program or whether you've had any kind of sobering up of any kind. If you have to leave an old self and give birth to a new identity, then you do have to kind of mother yourself through a transition, and you have to be there for yourself in a way that no one else can but you.
Very true.
And so there's that kind of, essential survival oxygen mask kind of love that, especially if you're at a point like that also has to be celebrated, I think, for all those who have made that transition as well.
And I think, whether it be addiction, but even without addiction, we're all, pulling our pieces back.
That's a beautiful way to say it.
And we all, I think there's life in birth. There's like I can look at a picture of myself a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and think, oh my gosh, like I have compassion for her. I see her and, from this perspective, a little more life experience, a little more wisdom. It's like I would choose differently today than I did a year ago. And once again, I think that's the gift that this human experience offers us, is the gift of evolution, the gift to begin again, the gift to be reborn, the gift to renew, to restore. And I think that that's the essential energies of mother energies, is that restoration. And that's the beautiful gift when we're holding the space for another through sponsoring life. I love that you've mentioned AA. My own parents, as I mentioned, they've sponsored individuals their whole life. There was always strangers coming into our home, and whether it be through the holidays or, Christmas dinner or something of that nature, and, the welcoming and the celebration with this beautiful human, and it schooled us as children to accept and to open our heart and our mind. And selfishly, sometimes it was like, no, I just want to be with you know what I mean? Now being an adult woman and being able to live that reality and pay that forward in my own unique way. I don't know. I think that's the universe. I think that's where we all meet. And I really feel like that's the gift, whether you're a parent, whether you're not, whether you're longing to be a mother. In my longing to be a mom, a lot of times in my own suffering, because of what life was offering me was different than my own, mind of the thought of the way I wanted or perceived it to be. In those moments, I was missing what life was offering me. And yet from this perspective, I can look back and be like, oh gosh, sweetheart, there was so much that was happening, and so much life to be lived and to be experienced right in front of us. And I think that's the beautiful gift of this journey we're all on.
And you've said this a few ways, using words like acceptance and surrender and out of our control. That thread I've noticed has kind of woven through a few of your responses here today. And that's something too that I think is so interesting. When I think of, in the past, I suppose, maybe before I became a mom, when I think of a parent, I kind of think of more control. And I realize that honestly, what would make a great loving parent is realizing that at some point you have to surrender control, not to your
Yes.
child, not hand over the reins and let your kid,
Mm-hmm.
do anything you want, but also that their path is in many ways, while you have influence, as Tony would say, you have influence, but you don't have control.
No.
And especially, like we have friends, for example, that have lost a child to an opioid addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see a parent, kind of the tragedies of parenthood and motherhood too,
Yes.
when you have that love, immeasurable love, and this is something that you have to at some point surrender and say,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, this child's path is out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
And even we both have, we know parents that are outstanding people and outstanding parents, and maybe their children are making decisions that they wish they weren't making, and they
Mhm.
could be harmful, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And even that part of, that's life. That's not just motherhood or parenthood. That's,
It is.
wow, there is a level of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever word feels true to anyone listening, maybe surrender. If it's not surrender, it's acceptance, it's acknowledgement that I, little me, do not have as much control as maybe I wish I had. But there's like an evolution that I think that comes, especially in any kind of parenting role of, yeah, this is out of my hands.
It's very true.
Let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Let go, let God, as my mom would say. And there's
Yes.
something there. It's like, I'm just starting now to understand all these little isms and catchphrases that my mom, I used to make fun of. And now I'm like, man, she was right. She was so right.
Your mom is lovely. I think, we're blessed with amazing parents. My parents as well, like they had two of my siblings, dealt with addiction, opioid addiction. And, watching the pain of that, watching the, the worry, the obsession, the enabling, all the dynamics that happen in the human play. And it's ironic, I thought I knew what surrender was in my 30s. In my 20s, I remember reading books about it. It's like, oh yeah, I surrender all the time. The truth is we do in each breath, we let go and we come back to a greater truth. But wow, I think one of the greatest gifts in AA is, the notion of one day at a time, or their prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I said that prayer throughout my entire life. And I remember praying it, and I said the words, and I didn't understand the words. And